Hello, this is Dr. Jeffrey Thibert, Assistant Director of National Fellowships at the Center for Undergraduate Scholarly Engagement, or CUSE, at the University of Notre Dame. This is part 2 of the Fulbright English Teaching Assistantship Application Workshop. If you haven't viewed part 1, you might want to do that. There was an interruption in the video at the end. We had some difficulty bringing a document down off of the screen share app in Google Hangouts. And so I stopped that video and I've started this one. Here we'll be talking about the references for the Fulbright English Teaching Assistantship application, and we'll also go through some sample applications. So let's get right into it. Again, you can go back and look at part 1 if you want the rest of the information. So here we have the reference form that referees for the Fulbright English Teaching Assistantship are asked to complete. Ultimately, you will put their information in online. They will be able to access this form and complete it, but you might want to share this form with them. It's available on the Fulbright U.S. Student Program website. The link will be available in the application advice document you've received once you've gone through the screening application process. What I want you to note is that these are essentially short answer questions. There's 100 words, 65 words, 65 words, 65 words, 85 words. So it's not a letter. And what you will want to do is ask the 3 people who you think can give the strongest answers to these particular questions. So note that the first question asked about your English communication ability. The second question asked about how you demonstrated qualities associated with teaching. The third asks about how you work in unstructured situations. The fourth asks about how you would be a representative of the U.S., how effective you'd be as a representative of the U.S. abroad. And the last is kind of a general statement that they can make about why they think you would be an effective English teaching assistant overseas. Now, it's possible that not all your referees will be able to give complete answers to all these questions, and that can be okay. I've seen people be successful where at least one of their referees had put not applicable in some of these sections because they couldn't address them. But the key is you would want strong answers to each of these questions among your 3 referees, and ideally all 3 of them would be able, of course, to comment on these, but it's possible that someone would be able to say a lot about your teaching, but not as much about how they've seen you do in classroom presentations because they haven't taught you. So you want to think about the 3 people who are best going to be able to complete this form. If you've been a great researcher, but the research you've done or the work you've done, it really isn't relevant to the English teaching assistantship, the person supervising your research might not always be the best person to fill out this form. Again, we're looking for the people who could best answer these questions. Of course, people who have taught languages, who have taught English as a second language, who have had international experience, these will be typically the most helpful people because they've had experiences similar to what you're proposing to do and will probably be able to comment more directly. But again, review this form, and when you're asking for recommenders, ask the 3 people who you think could best complete this form. Okay, so that came off the screen all right, which is good news. Let us go back to the application advice document for just one moment. Hopefully this won't freeze things again. Excuse me. So again, 3 referees. Now you will also need a language evaluation if you are going to a country where you either have some experience in the language or language proficiency is required, and that does happen in some cases. So if language proficiency at a certain level is required, you must have a foreign language evaluation, ideally completed by a college-level language instructor. And there's more information about that on this form, which you should have received if you've gone through the screening application process. But again, this is required because if they say they require a certain level of language proficiency, they will be using the foreign language evaluation to assure that you have that. And if you don't, you will be out of the running. So it's important um, that you think hard about who's going to do your foreign language evaluation. Now, even if the country doesn't require the language, but you have some experience in it, you may want to get a foreign language evaluation because often, of course, knowing the language will facilitate civic engagement in the place. So, even if, let's say, you're going to Korea, maybe you've taken a semester of Korean. Korea does not require that you know the language, but you still might want to get that foreign language evaluation just to show them that, I've started to learn the language. Maybe you will hope to learn a little more before you go, and that's going to facilitate cultural engagement when you are there. And then, of course, they will ask for transcripts. So now that we've gone through some application advice, let's turn and look at some sample applications that have been successful in past years. And hopefully, again, we will not freeze up at all. Let's start with an application to South Korea. And this is the first page. This is that information, that initial information I was talking about with the abstract of the host country engagement, plans upon return to the U.S. Note that you don't have to worry about an affiliation since you are not doing a study research application. Now, what I want you to note here is that there are very clear answers and compelling answers to all of these questions here. The abstract, it explains very clearly why the person wants to be in Korea and why they want to do the ETA. Note too that they have noted that the ETA in Korea is outside of Seoul. It's usually, you will not be placed in Seoul, and you will live with a host family. And she's worked that into the abstract to show that she understands, that particular English teaching assistant situation. As for host country engagement, this is a very specific, unique example of how this person can contribute. This is something that probably nobody else would have had in an application, and it's very connected to something that she did. And so, as you're thinking about how to describe host country engagement, think about something that would maybe uniquely appear in your application and connects well to some experience that you've had. You will, of course, be able to talk about this more in your statement of grand purpose, but these, note that it's 1515A. They're taking these together. They not only want to know, a brief summary of why you're doing this, but also how you're going to engage with the host country. That's how important this engagement is. If you don't have very compelling answers here, some reviewers may not continue on with the application if they have a lot to read, because there might be plenty that do have compelling answers here. So think about that. And then plans upon return to the U.S., you can see here that there's a very clear connection between the ETA and what the person wants to do next, which is work ideally in East Asian studies, wants to continue to learn Korean. So your connection may not be quite that direct, but think of a good reason why this is going to be useful to you. Now, let's move on to the statement of grand purpose. And I should note that sample applications are available in the CUSE office in 110 Brownson if you wish to come by, and you can check out a binder of applications that you can review in our office here. We'll also be putting some online, and if you've gone through the screening application process, you'll receive information about how to access these. It won't be as many as are available on campus in the CUSE office, but there should be a good set there. These are helpful, I think, in that there isn't one formula for doing these, but especially for the statement of grand purpose, it's helpful to see sometimes how other people have approached these questions. Your answers, of course, won't be the same, but it can be useful to see how multiple people have done this as you formulate your own approach. Now, right here at the beginning, we get an explanation of why the person wants to go to Korea. And as we kind of move into the second paragraph, we understand why the person wants to be an English teaching assistant. And it's based on previous tutoring experience the person has had. So here we get these why questions. Then, so both in this case, really the why questions are in the first paragraph. In the second paragraph, we get the what experiences do you bring? And this person had done English tutoring in the past. And this is kind of one key experience, but the person was able to draw on this to convince the reviewers that she would be an effective English teacher. And note how specific this example is. It's really just one example, but it's very specific. There are details here that show that this person has some grasp of what would be involved in being an English teaching assistant, and gives a specific idea for something this person would do in the classroom. Student-specific assignments that apply to the curriculum based on student interests, linking grammar to personal stories. And this person knows this can work because this person has done it before. So again, here we get the qualifications questions answered in the second paragraph. In the third paragraph, this is civic engagement. And the fourth paragraph actually touches on civic engagement as well. In this case, it's a detailed, specific example of how this person can contribute to civic engagement. They have done some research, found that a certain kind of program already exists, and explains even why this kind of engagement will contribute to people in the host country. So this would be likely very, in fact it was, this person was awarded the grant. This was probably very compelling to the reviewers. It was a unique idea that probably nobody else had, and the writer here actually explains how this idea is going to contribute to the host country. This is great. And then at the end here we get, how will this benefit you? Now, one thing to note is that this person basically went through those 7 questions and addressed each of the questions in turn, pretty much in the order that they appear in the advice on the Fulbright website. And it was effective because the person answered the questions authentically and gave specific details. There's nothing, there's not much here that's vague or generalized. Every point that's made here, there's some thinking or some example or some detail to back it up. So this is a really great statement of grant purpose that really illustrates how you can address those 7 questions in just 1 page. Now let's look briefly at the personal statement. Here, this person, and this is a useful technique for a personal statement, is to kind of start with a theme. In the first paragraph, sort of illustrate, try to come up with a theme, what you're about, or who you are. This person chooses to say, I have a particularly good knack at getting to know people well. Immediately connects this to the Fulbright, showing that this person understands what the Fulbright is about. And then in the rest of the essay, we get examples of how this person has done cultural engagement in her career. So there's a pretty clear theme. Now note, there's not really anything here about this person's upbringing. It's really focused on 2, I believe, 2 key experiences. And these experiences are used to illustrate the theme the person introduces, which is the theme that ties directly into what Fulbright cares about. Now, your theme may not be exactly this, but remember, you want to Tell them a story about yourself that is aligned with the Fulbright mission. That's why it's important to know what the program is about. If you know they're essentially looking for informal public diplomats, informal cultural ambassadors, then you might use your personal statement to explain why you want to do this and how you have done it. Convince them that you are going to be a great Fulbrighter, that you are really going to represent the U.S. well overseas, and ideally you would do that by sharing experiences with them. Don't just tell them I will be an effective public diplomat, but show them by giving them examples of things that you have done. I'll just kind of scroll down here so you can see the rest of it, but you'll note that at the end here, she comes back and connects this to her future goals and explains why, in a way, this is her theme, why this is the thing that she cares about. And she's able to talk about how the Fulbright ETA fits in with this theme, is going to contribute to her goals. Again, this is a very strong application, probably one of the strongest English teaching assistantship applications you'll see. And your application will not look exactly the same, but it's an interesting approach, I think, to look at. Now let's look at one more example before we close. And again, there will be more examples available online and in the CUSE offices. Let's look at, let's see. Let's look at Germany. So this was an application to Germany for the English teaching assistantship. Again, let's look at the abstract, host country engagement. Very clear ideas here as well. In the abstract, this person shows that they give a nice kind of striking example right here in the abstract that shows this person wants to basically fix the way that Americans are seen in Germany. This person had been to Germany, had a particular kind of encounter, and wants to do the work of a cultural ambassador. Now, what's interesting here is that the ETA aspect of this is not mentioned in the abstract. It doesn't necessarily have to be, but what is important, I think, is that this person clearly gets the Fulbright mission and understands what a Fulbrighter can do. With host country engagement, we get another clear example. This person had been to Germany and gives, again, an example of what he will do when he goes. There will be a tutor and will do rugby. And upon return to the U.S., plans to be a German teacher. Now, so that's obviously a clear connection to the ETA. So here you'll see that these answers don't necessarily touch on every aspect of the statement of grant purpose, for instance, when we look at the abstract, but still an effective application because the person gives specific examples of how they will engage. It's clear how this experience will contribute to the person's plans upon return to the U.S., and the abstract shows that this person gets the Fulbright mission. And it's a striking abstract. This probably stood out to the reviewers. Now, if we look at the statement of grant purpose, right at the beginning, we get here's what this person ultimately wants to do. Here's why they are doing it. So again, the first paragraph is the why. Then in the second, and really even in the third paragraph, we get the qualifications, the experience. This person has taught, has tutored, and we get specific examples of what the person has done. This person had visited schools in Berlin and had kind of already done some of this cultural ambassador work already. So you may not have these experiences, of course, but it's important to think about how you have done things that link up with what the Fulbright is about. In this last section here, we get an explanation of how the person's going to do civic engagement, and at the end, we get kind of a statement of how this person plans to benefit from this. So again, this is pretty much addressing the questions in order but through a compelling narrative. And this is what you have to do in the statement of grant purpose. You want to make sure that all those questions are there. So again, it can be very useful to start with those questions. Brainstorm how you're going to answer the questions, and then try writing a paragraph or two answering each one. Then combine everything. Let's briefly look at this person's personal statement. Here we get, because this person wants to be a teacher, it makes sense that the personal statement is very teaching oriented. There's a lot of stuff this person does not talk about that this person has done, but it's focused on the teaching experience this person had. How they've come to understood education, understand some of the challenges of education, talking about the time abroad, again focusing on the education, and at the end we get a sense of how this experience is going to contribute to this person's future trajectory. So I think what this kind of has in common with the other personal statement is that there's a pretty clear theme. In the other one, it was essentially public diplomacy, making connections across cultures. In this one, it is teaching, an interest in education. And so you want to consider what your theme might be. Given that you only have one page, you're not going to be able to talk about everything you've done. So you might want to go through your experiences and think about what experiences you do want to highlight. If you could really say what you were about, if there's kind of one main thing you wanted them to know about you that kind of sums you up, what is that thing? And then how would you show them that you actually are about that? Well, this person cares about teaching, and then we get a series of experiences that in an interesting way explains why this person cares about teaching. So we will have to end it there. There will be additional essays available in the CUSE offices. Some will be put online, and again, if you've gone through the screening application process, you'll receive more information about how to access those. But keep in mind that through the Notre Dame process, there will be key feedback deadlines over the summer where you will be able to submit drafts of your application to get feedback. And then the campus deadline will be in mid to late August, where you will have submitted ideally your entire application, and you will have a chance to get feedback from a campus committee, usually in early to mid-September, before things are finally due near the beginning of October. So we want to walk with you through the process. If you have questions at any time, feel free to email us at fellows, that's plural, at nd.edu, and we look forward to working with you to put together a competitive and hopefully successful Fulbright English Teaching Assistantship application. Thank you.